Today we are going to be ranking every single Breaking Bad universe character from both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but with a little bit of a twist. We are not going to be ranking them based on the characters that they are. We are going to be ranking them based on their likability. We already made a video ranking all of the characters based on the character itself, whether you liked them, whether you not like the character, just how interested in you when these characters were on screen, how good of a character that they are. But now, today we're going to be ranking them specifically on how likable is this character? Do you cheer for this character? Does this character make you laugh? Things like that, okay? Let's get straight into it over with Huel, and we're going to be ranking things over from S to F. Is Huel the most likable character in Breaking Bad? Definitely not the most likable, but Huel, I'm going to throw him actually over into the A tier. Like, he is quite a likable character. He's funny. He goes around, especially, dude, I've never cheered for Huel more than when Saul was going through that thing with Huel, where it's like, oh man, my Huel, he saved those kids from the burning church, or whatever he was saying about it. Whenever Huel's a part of things like that, you just like it because he just chills. Or like him just smacking the police officer the way that he did because he was blasting music with his headphones, the way he was laying on Walter's money. Huel's an incredibly likable character. Dude, I almost want to put him in S because of that. We might end up moving him around, but let's continue on over to the next character. Tuco. How likable is Tuco? And you know what's crazy? Is Tuco should be one of the most unlikable characters in the entirety of Breaking Bad universe, but the problem is Tuco has been memed to the point where Tuco is likable. And he was so scary the first time you watched Breaking Bad, but then the entire internet started watching Breaking Bad, and then all of a sudden you're watching him go, oh, tight, yeah. Just, you remember those clips with Jesse? It's like, yeah, man, this shit's the bomb. Shut the fuck up. And now he's not like an intimidating character at all. He's funnier. Oh, blue, yellow, pink. Bring me more of that. Like, it's just him getting angry is funny. The internet has completely twisted Tuco into the character that he's not supposed to be. So, guys, I'm being genuine with right now. Tuco's become a flat out funny character. I'm going to put him in the A tier. He's like meme worthy, like Huel is, you know? Let's get into the actual characters that you do want to cheer for, though. Steve Gomez. I actually believe Steve to be one of the most likable characters in Breaking Bad. It's because he's not, this character is about a lot of morally great characters, and a lot of people have done some really evil things, right? Steve's not that guy. He's just a regular cop who wants to do good. He cared for his partner Hank the entire time. Even like you felt so bad for him at the end. You were thinking about his family and things like that. He was just a regular, I want to do good police officer. Steve Gomez is definitely going into the S tier for likability. Now, completely on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have Jack. What is there to like about Jack? There's absolutely nothing, I can tell you that. The guy was a dick. The guy played the character that he was supposed to play perfectly. Did I hate him to the point, though, where I want to throw him into the F tier? I think I'm going to go with no. I might end up moving him down, but he's definitely in the T tier of unlikable. And to kind of give you guys the angle on how I'm looking at this right here, C tier is like middle of the road. I'm completely neutral on them, okay? And speaking of which, I always get this girl wrong whenever we do the Breaking Bad tier list. Like, I know everybody that's in these rows right now. I can tell you every single one of their characters and what they do and what role they had to play in the story. I get this girl, Francesca, or the office assistant, whatever she is. I keep forgetting exactly who this one is. She looks like another character, so we're going to put her in the C tier. I have no feelings towards her, okay? Kim Wexler. Very likable character. She was done dirty throughout a lot of the series. And you know what's interesting about both her and Saul? You know what? I might as well talk about both her and Saul at the same point. Where the hell is Saul? There he is. Both Kim and Jimmy, towards the end of the series, and this is what's interesting about Breaking Bad, because towards the end of the series, when you had a character like Walter became very unlikable. And both Kim and Jimmy ended up doing things that should have made them unlikable by the end, like especially with what they did to Howard. But you didn't really dislike them. Like, you know what I mean? Saul admitting to everything, Saul getting exactly what he was supposed to get towards the end of Better Call Saul. Like, he got justice, man. But you still cheered for him, and you still like Saul, and I would imagine that a lot of you would really feel the same way. So I almost want to ignore the bad things that both Kim and Jimmy have done, the scamming people, the lives that they've ruined, the things like that. You like both of them a lot, and you get a little bit of an insight to like what they've gone through. Kim is, for most of the series, Kim was somebody who wanted to just be a good lawyer, and she was just beaten down by Chuck, beaten down by Howard, and she got her cases stolen from her, and she had to do nothing but work. And she saw the good in Jimmy and realized like what a horrible person Jimmy was, and she was trying to like, you know, help him through his stuff. Kim ended up being a very, very likable character, and Jimmy as well, but we'll start with Kim. Kim is going to go into the S tier for sure. I'm putting her ahead of Steve because you got to know Kim a little bit more. And for Jimmy, he was only more likable throughout Better Call Saul because you loved him through Breaking Bad because he was the comedic relief. He was hilarious. He was involved in everything, but like he didn't, he wasn't responsible for a lot of things the other characters were doing. He was just funny. He came in, he always made you laugh. And then you get into Better Call Saul and you realize how much he's actually been through with, again, both Chuck and Howard, with what they did to him, with all of the personal drama that he went through, with him living in fear of Lalo, all of those types of things, being dragged into the cartel when he didn't want to. Saul and Jimmy, very, very likable character. But the question is, do we like him more than Kim? And I think that I'm gonna go with yes, with all things considered. Let's talk about Hank Schrader. You know what's funny? There's a couple characters over here. Funny enough, I was actually about to mention Howard, where you have these two characters where they were majorly unlikable at the beginning. Hank was like that like tough guy cop, like the guy, he seemed a little bit bullyish. He was constantly belittling Walt. Howard, we didn't know, was kind of being puppeted by Chuck. And Howard was just, for no reason, sabotaging, and like, oh, well, what can you do, Jimmy? You're not a lawyer, random stuff like that. Like, oh, Kim, mailroom. And then, as the series gone on with Hank, you had Walter become the bad guy, and then you ended up cheering for Hank, and more bad things kept happening to him. With Howard, you felt awful for after realizing what he's been going through, with being controlled by Chuck to legitimately wanting to build a relationship with Jimmy and Kim, wanting the best for them, wanting to be a good, honest lawyer, and Jimmy's just scumming him still. And then what they did, destroying his entire life and his entire reputation, you felt so bad for Howard. So both of these characters ended up being insanely likable. I'm going to put them both into the S tier, actually. Hank is going to be below Steve, and Howard, that's a little bit of a toughie. I'm going to put Howard, Ooh. And obviously I'm ranking these by the characters that they became, like, once the series ended up concluding. Obviously there was a lot of growth, a lot of characters, right? Howard's in the S tier too, but do you like him more than Hank? I'm going to go with... It's close, but I'm going to go with no. You kind of cheered for Hank, right? Especially because both, both of them had, like, a horrible demise. Let's talk about Mike. Now, Mike is the more of an interesting character because Mike is a guy who's very, very morally compromised. He's done a lot of bad things, but he's still such a likable guy. You liked how much he cared for his granddaughter. You love how much he cared for his niece. You love how much he cared for Jesse. He was a compassionate guy at points, and you kind of just cheered for him. Everything that he did, he just wanted to put money away for his granddaughter. But there were also just straight up evil things that he's done throughout the entire series. But you can't help but still like him. So dare I put Mike over to the S tier? You constantly cheered for Mike, and it looked good on him the way that he didn't like Walt, the way he was belittling Walt. He was fair. I'll give him that. I'm going to put Mike into the S tier as well. Breaking Bad had a lot of really likable characters. I am going to put Mike... Oh, man, another toughie over here. I'm going to put Mike right behind Kim. Very, very likable character. Now, for Walt Jr., he's likable, but at the same point, you don't really build that connection with him as a viewer in comparison to everybody else, so I feel like he's just a little bit above C. C would be neutral. Walt Jr. is going to go into the B tier. There's nothing really special about him. He's been memed. That makes him a little bit more likable, but we're going to leave him right there. Now for Jane. Now, this is a little bit difficult because... when we were all watching this at the beginning, and I watched Breaking Bad, like, from the get-go, right from when I was a kid, and obviously you look at Jane and you go, oh my god, now that's a likable girl right there. But if you can get past that, if you can get past just looking at Jane, you don't like her at all, because at this point, you're still cheering for Walter. And what's funny enough is when Jane's character ended up coming to an end, that was probably the beginning for a lot of people turning on Walter. So at that time, you saw Jane for what she was. You saw her just completely ruining Jesse. You saw her taking Jesse's money and didn't exactly it wasn't, oh, I love you. She was kind of like horrible to Jesse in a sense, and didn't want this embarrassment to be in front of her dad, all those types of things, but I'm going to date you anyways. I'm going to have fun with you. But once you figure out he had a lot of money, it's like, oh, let's run away together. I love you so much, Jesse. You're the best ever. And at this time, you were still kind of cheering for Walt. So the fact that she was blackmailing Walt, you didn't like. So Jane kind of she wasn't quite unlikable. She should be unlikable, but it was also, she had her moments because she made Jesse happy in some points, I'm going to put Jane over to the C tier. She's right in the middle of the road, okay? Marie, though. Oh, she's lucky Marie is a very, very lucky character. Sorry, I just looked at that picture of Chuck after. Marie is lucky that she ended up like ending the series on a high note, because she was unlikable throughout the entirety of Breaking Bad. She was just that, that typical annoying, naggy wife to Hank. On top of that, you had the whole shoplifting story. We didn't really understand it. Who cares? She continued doing it's not quite stealing. I was like, not quite shoplifting, but at homes. She was stealing from homes. It's these bunch of side plots that you didn't even care about or like from Marie. She was horrible to so many people. Like, she was just existing and she was annoying. That was the problem. But you liked her in season 5. It's like they scrapped everything that was poor about her, and she just like was a supportive wife to Hank. And you started feeling bad for her just a little bit too. You could have felt bad for her, and she could have been a lot more likable after Hank's accident. But then she went on and started stealing and just did that thing to Hank again, where he had to go, "Oh, hey guys, can you let my wife off?" I think Marie, she ended on a high note, but everything she didn't really save her, and she still ended up being an unlikable character. So I'm gonna put her at the top of D tier. Okay, now for Chuck. One of the most unlikable characters in the entirety of the Breaking Bad universe. There's no redeeming qualities about this guy. He's like, I care about the law. Sabotage Jimmy, sabotage Jimmy, sabotage Jimmy at every single turn. Even ruining Howard's reputation in comparison to them, because he didn't want to be the guy to scum Jimmy. And with all these backstories that you saw too, you saw a little bit of a deeper look into Chuck's mind. And you just saw that he was a deeply hateful person. He always resented Jimmy because Jimmy was good with people, things like that. Chuck is going to be our first F tier. He is the most, or might be the most unlikable character in the entirety of the Breaking Bad universe, okay? Werner. You know what's sad is you liked Werner. You understand that he wanted to just go see his wife, but you kind of look at him just like, oh my God, you're a stupid guy. I get it, but at the end of the day, like, you signed up for a job and you're putting everybody at risk, Not for a really good reason, but he was okay. I'm going to put him in the C tier. He's kind of like neutral. I'm going to put him right behind Jane right there, okay? Now for Gus. For likability, that's tough. You liked him on screen. He was a very interesting character, but you never build that like viewer relationship with Gus at all. You don't hate him. You don't love him. Do you guys feel the same way? Like, I never looked at Gus, I go, ooh, I hate this guy, or ooh, Gus is pretty cool. Middle of the road. Very interesting character. Top tier character when it comes to like being an interesting character, but for likability, middle of the road. We're going to put him in C tier right behind Werner over here, okay? Now for Hector. Guys, Hector is a guy that you love to hate. Again, kind of like Chuck, but multiply that. Very, very, very evil man. Actually, Todd too. Now that Todd's right next to him, might as well talk about both of them. You had Hector, who was just slimy. He hurt people. He was a horrible person for no reason to a bunch of people. He was power hungry. He had a lot of hate in his heart. And Todd is just a creep, screw up. Like, he is, how do you even describe Todd? The guy is a actual sociopath. Like, the guy has something screwed up. Like, Todd's like beyond evil. You know what I mean? Where it's like, ooh, I'm gonna torture this guy and I'm gonna like it. You know what I mean? Where Hector would just like want the power over somebody and just like, yeah, I shot this guy. Look at me. I'm a badass. Todd would actually like take pleasure in like actively hurting someone. You know what I mean? Not that Hector wouldn't, but there's a difference there. Okay. Both of these guys are going into the F tier. Dare I say you hate Chuck more though? Chuck, because Jimmy was such a likable character, right? We were all on Jimmy's side, and Chuck was such a horrible brother to him. We got a little bit more of an insight on it. I understand that Hector and Todd are objectively worse people than Chuck, but that's not what the tier list is about. Likability. And Chuck is a very unlikable character. We are putting both of these into the F tier with Chuck at the very bottom. Just goes to show how good of an actor he is, man. But yeah, I'd say Hector, then Todd, then Chuck, okay? Jesse. Jesse is obviously one of the most likable characters in Breaking Bad, despite all of the evil things that he ended up doing. You constantly felt bad for him. He was getting beat up at every single turn. He was constantly like being used by Walt, being used by Gus, being used at every point, every single turn. He fell in love with 2 girls, ended up getting them both killed, and it kind of being his fault. He was forced in a way to end up killing somebody. He had to deal with that. He was hooked on drugs. He was just always like the stuff that the guy went through, family troubles too. You really felt for Jesse despite, again, him being a morally compromised character. So Jesse, and on top of that, he was funny. You were always on Team Jesse throughout the entirety of the show, so Jesse is also going into the S tier. I'm going to put Jesse, though. He's more likable than Hank and Howard for sure. We see more of him, so I think he can go ahead of Steve. I'm going to put him, the question is, like, is he more likable than Mike? And I'm going to go with yes. I'm going to put him in third place. I like Jimmy and Kim more than I like Jesse. These two are probably some of my favorite characters in the entire Breaking Bad universe. Let's talk about Badger. Not a lot to him. He's kind of like a Walt Jr. level. You see him every once in a while. He's funny. Same with Skinny Pete. They're Jesse's friends. They're mostly there for comedic relief, and they do a good job of it. You like them. They're just regular drug dealers. I'm going to put them in the B tier. I'm going to put them both ahead of Walt Jr., except I like Badger more than I like Skinny Pete, okay? Let's talk about Gale. Yeah, I'd say he's likable. I'd say he's barely above neutral for Gale. Not a lot to him again. B tier, there's like characters that go, yeah, they're around, they're okay. I like him. You felt bad for Gale. Low B tier for Gale, okay? Lydia. Oh, man. Lydia. It's so funny. I can't even repeat what... was it Jack that said it about Lydia? You know, when he made a comment about something in particular being tight? Yeah, that would describe Lydia pretty well. The girl is off her rocker. The girl's crazy. But it was almost like... her craziness was almost funny. You know? I loved her relationship with Mike, where Mike goes, hey, this woman deserves to die more than any man I've ever known. Look at you, Jesse. You're being sexist now. And I kind of laughed at those parts. And while Lydia should be a very unlikable person for everything that she's done, she's kind of gotten elevated. Like, I liked her relationship with Walt. I liked when she was constantly bickering with them. I found it funny when Hank ended up visiting her and she just goes upstairs, closes the blinds, and just screams into all of the pillows. Lydia was like kind of likable for those reasons. I hope you guys know what I'm talking about. So honestly, I want to put her into the B tier. Yeah, I hope I'm coming off correctly. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. I'm actually going to put her at the top of B tier, okay? Now the cousins. You didn't like the cousins. I don't like the cousins. You guys, I would imagine nobody really likes the cousins. They go on, they chop people with axes. They got a little bit of aura to them, but they're very unlikable characters. I'm going to put them right behind Marie, okay? Now for Stacy. I know there's a lot of people that didn't like Stacy. I personally like Stacy. She's kind of like the middle of the road. It was more so like I liked how much Mike cared for her and took care of her, you know, that type of thing. She did a good job for the character she was supposed to be. I'm going to put her low B tier. Likeable, okay? Now for, oh my god, I forget this guy's name. Oh man, you got Tyrus and we got Victor. Victor? I believe it was. Why am I having a blank on that? But honestly, I have no feelings towards Victor. He was there. He did his job. I'm going to put him in the C tier right behind Gus, okay? Now, Tyrus was a little bit more unlikable. It's just like the smirk that he was given. You know what I mean? With him just like enjoying bullying Walt and Jesse, and like the tensions were really high because of Walt and Jesse constantly having to worry about dying. Like the guy was a dick for no reason, putting Walt into the laundry, which was kind of funny. But at the same time, like you just didn't really like Tyrus, you know? I'm going to put him in the D tier. I'm going to put him at the top of D tier. He's like almost getting into C category, but he's more unlikable than he's not. Now for the vacuum repairman, no feelings towards him whatsoever. We're going to put him into the C tier as well. Now, I want to know what you guys think about this one, okay? Nacho. In my opinion, Nacho is one of the most likable characters in the entirety of the Breaking Bad universe. Now, something that I probably should have mentioned because I have Jimmy and Kim at the very top, right? I liked Better Call Saul more than I did Breaking Bad. I think both are top tier shows, but I really, really loved the story Better Call Saul more. And I'm going to rate Nacho very highly. I liked him from the get-go. I thought he was always an interesting character. And the more that you saw him go through, the issues that he was having with his father, the way that he just kind of like wanted an out, and the way that he was forced to go out, and the journey that he ended up taking to get there, I thought he was an incredibly likable character. I felt bad for him, kind of like how I felt bad for Jesse. And I don't know if this is going to be a hot take or not, guys, but I'm going to put Nacho right ahead of Jesse. I liked him more than Jesse. It is a clear top three for me right here between Saul, Jimmy, and Jimmy, Kim, and Nacho. Loved all of those characters, okay? Skyler. Now, I will say Skyler was obviously justified in being the bitch that she was. But man, especially from the get-go, you hated Skyler right from the get-go because Walt was doing nothing but being a regular husband. Like, of course, like, not the best husband in the world, but he was a hardworking husband. He cared for his family, but he was like a weak guy. It's kind of understandable why his wife wouldn't be attracted to him. You know what I mean? But not that he deserved it. I'm just saying you get it. But Skyler was just horrible to him for nothing, nagging him, belittling him. I actually made an entire video on like why the beginning of Walt's story is a cautionary tale to men. Skylar, the way on his birthday gave him like the handy with while shopping for eBay, like how humiliating could you possibly get with her taking control when he's the one with cancer? All of that type of stuff made her unlikable. And when Walt ended up getting into his activities, Skylar's hatred for him and Skylar's misery was completely justified up until you get to the point of where she started sleeping with Ted. And even that, to an extent, was justified because of who the person and the type of husband Walt was becoming. But I would imagine a lot of you would agree with me over here. It's just us as men, and I'm sorry if there's any women watching this video, but us as men, I know you can relate to this because you automatically have just like an internal disdain for infidelity. No matter what the story is, you just hate Skylar for it. You just, oh, I just realized Ted's not on this list. But you get my point. And Skylar, her misery and depression and everything was so understandable, but you hated her as much as you hated Walter. She was just horrible because Skylar was horrible to begin with, you know? Even when Skylar was getting on Walt's case, when Walt was like, if you want out, just say you want out, and Skylar's like, I'm putting the money away, like, you know? Gave it all to Ted, you know? Incredibly unlikable character. She's in Chuck territory. Now, here's the problem. And I know where I'm placing her, but we're talking about likability here. We're not talking about how good of a character that they are. Skylar's with Chuck at the very bottom. I am going to put her at the bottom. This displays that the actor did such a phenomenal job with Skylar. She did the job. Skylar was completely unlikable, and she was unlikable throughout the entire series. Even the points where you should feel bad for Skylar, you don't because she's so bad, you know? So I don't know if that's a hot take or not. Now, for Lalo Salamanca, a little bit of an interesting one. Kind of like how we were talking about with Mike, where you have a little bit of a morally gray character, except he's not morally gray. Lalo is very evil. But he had a certain charm and a certain charisma to him that made him a little bit likable. You know, it's kind of like Lydia, too. Lydia is a bad person. Tuco's there because he's getting memed to death. But Lalo, it's something about, like, the way that, I don't know, one of my friends and I always quote this, where it's like, wow, how lucky am I? Where it's just like, he's just being himself around Gus. He brings a certain kind of charm to him. He brings a certain kind of charisma to him. And you just end up liking him. I wouldn't quite say that, like, I cheered for Lalo, but he was fun to have on screen. You know, I think I'm going to put him over into the B tier. I'm actually going to put him, like, probably, you know what? He was really cool to watch. I feel so weird about putting him here. But then again, we have like Jesse, Nacho, Mike for the things they've done. We have Tuco over in the A tier, but Tuco's like just a meme tier in himself. I'm going to put Lalo right behind Tuco over in the A tier. And finally, we have Walter White. Here's the problem. Walter became so unlikable. He was likable at the beginning. You cheered for him, and perhaps you even liked and cheered for him through seasons 2, 3, and 4. I understand that, and I was kind of on Walt's team, but I'm like, ooh, that's evil. Ooh, that's evil. You know what I mean? You started questioning things, but at the end of the day, I still did like Walter as a character. In season 5, when he started getting arrogant, when he took the place of Gus, when he was clearly using Jesse and playing with his life, when he was trying to kill everybody that was a nuisance to him, he became very evil, and the show did such a good job at making this character, turning this character that you cheered for throughout the entire series, and completely flipping it naturally. So I've been ranking all of these people based on how they became once the series ended up concluding, because that was the development of their character. So I'm going to rank Walt with that. And Walt became very unlikable, but unlikable the best way possible, because I know I'm going to put him in the D tier, right? But he's such a good character. He's an S tier character. But again, we're ranking these characters on unlikability and likability, okay? Or just likability. Walter is going to go to the top of D tier over here, because at least up until, like, throughout season 5, even towards the end, you still felt bad for him that his marriage fell apart, because of, like, you knew what he ended up, like, getting into this entire game for. But the things that he was doing, the way that he was treating Jesse, the way that he was playing with lives, the way he was just offing everybody, the way he was just so arrogant, the way he killed Mike, all of that really started to make you hate Walter throughout the entire series. And I think he landed himself over in the D tier for unlikable, but he's not quite as unlikable as Hector, Todd, Chuck, and Skylar. Crazy that Skylar's right at the bottom, guys. And that is my official tier list for the Breaking Bad universe characters ranked by likability. If you guys are interested in that video that I was talking about, where Walt's story at the beginning of Breaking Bad is a cautionary tale for young men, then check it out right here. I would love to have you guys over there. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your time today. Take care, guys.